My friends, today I want to talk to you about something most people try very hard to avoid: failure. Not the dramatic kind that arrives with sirens and warnings, but the quiet kind. The kind that slips into your life unnoticed, day after day, choice after choice. You see, failure is a subtle enemy. It doesn't knock on your door and announce, "Here I am." No. It creeps in through small decisions, tiny habits, little delays, and the things we promise we'll get to someday. Jim Rohn used to say, failure is nothing more than a few errors in judgment repeated every day. And the tragedy is, he was right. We don't fail overnight. We fail slowly, quietly, one missed opportunity at a time. And the same thing is true about success. It's not one big leap, but a series of small, disciplined steps. Most people spend their lives waiting for something dramatic to change their outcomes, waiting for luck, waiting for a miracle, waiting for a perfect moment that never arrives. But my friends, the real reason people fail is not a shortage of talent or intelligence or potential. The real reason is this: they underestimate the power of the little things, the daily decisions, the ordinary choices, the habits that seem harmless today but become destructive tomorrow. Today, I want to give you a wake-up call. Not a harsh one, an honest one. Because if you can understand why failure happens, you can prevent it before it ever reaches your door. And if you can recognize the habits that quietly steal your future, you can stop them today and replace them with habits that build the life you truly want. By the time we're done, my hope is that you'll see failure for what it really is: not a surprise, not a mystery, but a pattern. And if you can change that pattern, you can change your entire future. So let's begin this journey together. Because the moment you understand what causes failure is the moment you gain the power to design success. My friends, before we talk about the habits themselves, we have to understand the philosophy behind failure. And I call it a philosophy because it's not an event, it's a pattern of thinking, it's a way of living, it's a set of quiet assumptions we make about life without ever stopping to question them. Failure doesn't fall out of the sky, it grows like weeds in a garden you forgot to tend. Jim Rohn used to say something profound: failure is subtle. It's not loud or dramatic, it's sneaky, it whispers rather than shouts. It comes from the little choices that feel comfortable in the moment but costly in the long run. And that's why so many people get caught by it. They never see it coming. Let me tell you how failure really works. It begins with the small, easy errors: skipping one day of reading, missing one day of planning, avoiding one tough decision, choosing convenience over principle just once. And nothing bad happens, right? One day doesn't ruin your life. And that's where the danger lies, because if one day doesn't hurt, maybe 2 days won't hurt, then 3, then 10, and suddenly a whole year has passed, and you're wondering why your life hasn't changed. Failure works like compound interest, but in reverse. Little errors repeated daily don't just stay little, they grow, they multiply. They turn into habits, and habits turn into character, and character determines your destiny. Not in one big moment, but over thousands of tiny ones. Meanwhile, success works the exact same way. Simple disciplines practiced daily, even if they're small, compound over time. The problem is this: the results of discipline are delayed, and the results of neglect are also delayed. That's why people get tricked. Success doesn't show up immediately to reward you, and failure doesn't show up immediately to punish you. And because both take time, most people get fooled into believing their choices don't matter. But, my friends, everything matters. Every choice is a seed, every habit is a direction, every decision is a vote for the future you want or the future you want to avoid. Once you understand this philosophy, something powerful happens. You stop asking, "What does this cost me today?" And you start asking, "What will this cost me eventually?" That's the question wise people ask. Because the future doesn't react to your intentions, it reacts to your patterns. So now that we understand how failure truly works, subtle, slow, silent, we can finally uncover the habits that create it. And once we expose those habits to the light, my friends, they lose their power. My friends, let's talk about the first habit, the one I consider the most dangerous, the most seductive, and the most widespread. It is the habit that has destroyed more dreams than failure ever has. It's responsible for more missed opportunities, more broken goals, and more silent regret than anything else I've ever seen. And that habit is the habit of saying, I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow. What a comfortable word. What a pleasant escape. Tomorrow is the perfect place to store everything we know we should do but don't feel like doing today. Tomorrow is where people put their best intentions, their exercise routine, their business idea, their reading plan, their discipline, their new habits. And tomorrow never argues. Tomorrow never demands proof. Tomorrow never holds you accountable. Tomorrow always agrees. But here's the truth Jim Rohn taught me, and it's a truth we all must learn. Tomorrow is the enemy of progress. You see, most people think procrastination is a time issue. I don't have time today, I'll do it later. But no, procrastination is not about time. It's about decisions. It's about priorities. It's about the little negotiation we have with ourselves every time something feels uncomfortable. We say, I'll do it when I feel better, as if feelings have anything to do with discipline. Let me tell you something, my friends. The future does not belong to the person who promises. The future belongs to the person who starts. And the tragedy is this: most people live their entire lives in the waiting room of tomorrow. They wait for motivation. They wait for clarity. They wait for the perfect mood, the perfect chance, the perfect season. But there's no such thing as the perfect moment. If you wait for perfect, you'll wait forever. Jim Rohn used to say, without a sense of urgency, desire loses its value. Desire without action is just hope. And hope, while beautiful, is not a strategy. The habit of delaying things just for one day seems harmless. But remember, every day you delay, you strengthen the muscle of procrastination. And the more you strengthen that muscle, the harder it becomes to move when it truly matters. Procrastination is like a credit card. You enjoy it now, but the bill eventually comes due. And here's the painful truth. People don't ruin their lives in a week. They ruin them a day at a time by pushing today's responsibilities into tomorrow until tomorrow becomes next year and next year becomes never. But the good news, my friends, the miracle of choice is that you can break this habit today. You don't need a new week or a new month or a new year. You need a new decision. Because the moment you say, I'm not waiting another day, that is the moment your life begins to change direction. Later in this talk, I'll show you how to break this habit for good. But for now, remember this. The difference between failure and success is often just the difference between someday and today. My friends, the second habit, the one that stops more people from rising, learning, growing, and transforming than almost anything else, is the habit of blaming. And let me tell you, this is one of the most dangerous habits a person can develop. Why? Because the moment you blame, you hand over your power. You see, blaming is attractive. It's comfortable. It's emotionally convenient. Whenever something goes wrong, it gives us a place to point our finger instead of a place to look in the mirror. And my friends, mirrors are uncomfortable places. They show us not only what we want to see, but everything we'd rather ignore. Jim Rohn used to say, you cannot hire someone to do your push-ups for you, and the same is true for responsibility. You cannot outsource your progress. You cannot delegate your discipline. You cannot hand your future to someone else and expect to live your dreams. But here's what most people do. They blame their boss. They blame their parents. They blame the economy. They blame their childhood. They blame the weather. And when all else fails, they blame time. I didn't have time. Yes, my friends, you did have time. What you didn't have was priority. Now, don't misunderstand me. Life is not always fair. Circumstances can be heavy. People can disappoint you. Conditions may not be ideal. But here is the truth. Every successful person eventually learns. Circumstances might not be your fault, but your response is your responsibility. Let me repeat that, because it is one of the great turning points of life. Circumstances might not be your fault, but your response is your responsibility. And that is where power begins, right at the point where excuses end. Excuses feel good in the moment, but they sabotage us in the long run. Blame allows you to feel relieved today, but it ensures you will feel regret tomorrow. You see, when you blame, you freeze your life. You become stuck, because if someone else is responsible for your failures, then someone else must also be responsible for your success. But nobody is coming to rescue you, my friends. No government, no boss, no mentor, no miracle. The cavalry's not coming. And that's the best news in the world. Why? Because if no one else is responsible for your future, then you are free to build it. Jim Rohn taught that the day you stop blaming is the day you start growing. It is the day you stop waiting for life to be easier and start working to become stronger. The moment you say, this is on me, my life, my choices, my habits, my future, you reclaim power, you reclaim direction, you reclaim destiny. That single shift from blame to ownership can move you from the passenger seat to the driver's seat in an instant. Blame keeps you small. Ownership makes you powerful. Blame keeps you stuck. Ownership sets you free. Blame delays change. Ownership creates it. So my friends, the question is not who is at fault. The question is who has the power to change this? And the answer is the same every time. You do. My friends, the third habit, the one that quietly steals potential from millions, is the habit of living life with no plan, no direction, no blueprint, just drifting, hoping things will somehow work themselves out. And let me tell you, drifting is one of the greatest causes of failure because nothing significant ever happens by accident. Jim Rohn used to say, if you don't have a plan for your life, you will probably fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. And he was right. Think about it. You would never build a house without a blueprint. You would never start a business without a strategy. You would never take a trip without knowing where you're going. But people wake up every day and step into their lives with no map, no purpose, no agenda, and they wonder why they end up somewhere they never intended to be. The truth is simple. A life without a plan is a life left to chance. And chance is a terrible architect. What most people call stress is often just the consequence of reactive living, always responding, always catching up, always putting out fires. But successful people, they live with intention. They live with clarity. They live with purpose. You see, the human mind loves order. It thrives when it knows what matters today, what can wait for tomorrow, and what must never be neglected. Without a plan, your mind becomes overwhelmed, your energy becomes scattered, and your days become a cycle of busyness without progress. Jim Rohn taught that when you write your goals, something remarkable happens. Your vision sharpens, your priorities shift, your thoughts align, your energy organizes, your actions become meaningful. A written plan is not just a list, it's a contract with your future. And when you put things on paper, you give your dreams a place to live. But here's the surprising truth. Most people don't fail because they aim too high and miss. No, my friends, they fail because they aim too low or never aim at all. A plan gives you a target. A target gives you direction. Direction gives you momentum. And momentum changes everything. It doesn't have to be complicated. Start with a simple daily list. What are the top 3 things that matter today? What must be done? Who must you become? What moves the needle forward? When you plan your day the night before, you walk into the morning with intention, not confusion. You begin with clarity instead of chaos, and you live proactively instead of reactively. My friends, life will test you, stretch you, and challenge you. But if you have a plan, a real written plan, you will always have something stronger than circumstance, a direction. My friends, now that we've uncovered the 3 silent habits that lead to failure, procrastination, blaming, and drifting without a plan, it's time to reveal something even more important. These habits don't operate alone. They work together. They reinforce one another. They form a chain reaction that slowly pulls a person away from their potential, day after day, choice after choice. Let me show you how the chain forms. First comes procrastination, the decision to delay. The small whisper that says, I'll do it tomorrow. And the moment you buy into that whisper, you lose your sense of urgency. You lose the spark that keeps you moving forward. Then, when tomorrow comes and you didn't follow through, you start looking for reasons. You start explaining. You start blaming. I was tired. I didn't feel ready. It wasn't the right moment. You blame circumstances to protect your feelings instead of taking responsibility to protect your future. And once you blame long enough, something subtle happens. You stop planning, because what's the point of planning if you're not acting? What's the point of planning if you don't believe you're responsible? What's the point of planning if tomorrow is always the escape route? And that, my friends, is where drifting begins, quietly, gently, almost invisibly. When you don't act, and you don't take ownership, and you don't plan, you drift. You float. You let life decide for you. You let circumstances be captain of the ship. And let me tell you something. Jim Rohn said that changed my thinking forever. If you don't decide where you're going, you'll end up where you don't want to be. Momentum is a powerful force. Once it begins, it's hard to stop. If you build the wrong momentum, momentum of delay, momentum of excuses, momentum of drifting, it will carry you farther away from opportunity than you ever intended to go. But there's something else you must understand. Failure accelerates. Just like success accelerates. Just like wealth accelerates. Just like health accelerates. Whatever direction you choose, up or down, momentum multiplies it. At first, procrastination feels small. Blame feels justified. Lack of planning feels harmless. But each one magnifies the next. Delay becomes doubt. Doubt becomes avoidance. Avoidance becomes resignation. And resignation becomes failure, not overnight, but eventually, inevitably. That is the chain reaction. That is how people lose years of their lives without ever noticing the moment it started slipping away. But here's the miracle of choice. Momentum works the other way too. Replace procrastination with action. Replace blame with ownership. Replace drifting with a plan. And suddenly, just like that, the chain reverses. Action creates confidence. Confidence fuels planning. Planning creates direction. Direction builds momentum. Momentum generates results. And results transform your destiny. My friends, failure is not a mystery. Success is not an accident. Both are built the same way, one small habit at a time. And when you understand the chain reaction, you gain something priceless. The power to break it. The power to reverse it. The power to build a new chain, one that leads upward, not downward. My friends, every life, every single one comes to a turning point. A moment when a person finally stands face to face with their habits, their excuses, their patterns, and says, this can't continue. A moment when a small shift in thinking becomes the beginning of a great shift in destiny. Most people wait years for that moment. But the truth is, the turning point doesn't appear on its own. You create it. Jim Rohn used to say, life gets better when you get better. Not when the government changes, not when your boss changes, not when your circumstances change, when you change. That's the turning point. A decision, not a miracle. A choice, not a lucky break. So tonight, I want to show you how to break these 3 habits. Not next month, not next week, but tonight. Because change doesn't require time. It requires commitment. Let's begin with the simplest truth. You cannot remove a bad habit. You must replace it. Nature hates a vacuum. If you stop procrastinating but don't fill that space with action, you will return to delay. If you stop blaming but don't replace it with ownership, you will return to excuses. If you stop drifting but don't replace it with planning, you will return to chaos. So what do we replace these habits with? Let me give you 3 powerful tools Jim Rohn would absolutely approve of. 1. The 10-minute rule. Most people fail because they try to change everything at once. But 10 minutes? 10 minutes is small enough for anyone to start and big enough to build momentum. Want to break procrastination? Tonight, give 10 minutes to the task you've been avoiding. Just 10. You'll be amazed how a small beginning creates a large shift in identity. Big doors swing on small hinges. 2. The daily 3 decisions checklist. Every evening, ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do today that moved me forward? What did I do that held me back? What is the one thing I will absolutely do tomorrow? Responsibility grows when awareness grows. When you review your day, you refuse to drift. You refuse to leave your life to chance. You take ownership, and ownership is the birthplace of transformation. 3. The no more excuses contract. Write this sentence on paper. From this moment, I accept 100% responsibility for my life. Sign it. Date it. Read it every morning. Why? Because you cannot build a new life with old excuses. Once you take ownership, blame loses its power. My friends, the turning point is not about perfection, it's about direction. You don't need to become a new person overnight. You simply need to choose a new path tonight. When you replace delay with action, you break the first link. When you replace blame with responsibility, you break the second. When you replace drifting with planning, you break the third. And once those links are broken, something remarkable happens. You feel lighter. You feel capable. You feel in control. You realize that the future is not a mystery, it is a consequence. And consequences can be chosen just as easily as habits. So tonight, before you go to bed, take one small action, one decision, one step, because the miracle of life is this. It only takes one decision to start a new direction. My friends, once you've broken the chain of destructive habits, something extraordinary becomes possible. You can begin building a new identity. And this is where the real transformation happens. Because success is not just about what you do. Success is about who you become. Jim Rohn said it beautifully. Success is something you attract by the person you become. Think about that. Success is not pursued, it is attracted. And what attracts success is identity. Not the identity you were given, not the identity shaped by old habits, but the identity you choose to build. Most people try to change their lives without changing themselves. They want new results but keep the same thinking. They want new opportunities but keep the same habits. They want new outcomes but keep the same identity. And my friends, that's not how life works. Your results will always return to the level of your identity. Always. So how do you build the identity of a person who doesn't fail? Let me give you the foundations Jim Rohn lived by. 1. Identity begins with standards. Your habits follow your standards. If your standard is, I'll start when I feel like it, your life will always be inconsistent. But if your standard becomes, I keep my promises, especially to myself, everything changes. You rise. You grow. You elevate. Success begins with raising the standard for who you choose to be. 2. Identity requires discipline. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you can become. Most people wait for motivation, but disciplined people, they act because they said they would. And every time you follow through, every time you choose discipline over comfort, you strengthen the identity of a person who succeeds. 3. Identity thrives on clarity. A person with no plan becomes a person with no direction. But when you write your goals, when you set your intentions, when you choose your target, your mind begins to align with your future. Clarity turns confusion into confidence, and confidence fuels momentum. 4. Identity is reinforced through consistency. Identity is not built in a single moment, it is built in repeated moments. When you consistently act according to your future, not your past, you begin to believe in your ability to grow, and once you believe, you no longer need external motivation. Your own actions motivate you. Your results inspire you. Your progress becomes proof. 5. Identity is strengthened by self-respect. Let me tell you something most people never realize. Self-respect comes from keeping promises to yourself. If you want to feel strong, keep a promise. If you want to feel capable, complete a task you once avoided. If you want to feel confident, follow through when no one is watching. Self-respect is not a gift, it's a consequence. And once you respect yourself, you stop tolerating the habits that lead to failure. 6. Identity is anchored in purpose. Purpose gives meaning to your habits. It gives strength to your discipline. It gives courage to your decisions. When you know why you're becoming better, the how becomes easier. Purpose turns effort into devotion and discipline into joy. My friends, the moment you begin to build this kind of identity, life changes. You no longer wake up wondering, will I be productive today? You wake up thinking, of course I will. It's who I am. You no longer ask, will I follow through? You say, I follow through because that's what I do. At some point, you stop fighting your old self and you start becoming your higher self. And when that happens, success stops being a struggle. It becomes natural. It becomes predictable. It becomes a reflection of your identity. And that, my friends, is when you truly become the kind of person who does not fail, not because life is easy, but because you are steady. Not because you avoid challenges, but because you meet them with character. Not because you never fall, but because you always rise. My friends, we've taken quite a journey together. We've looked failure in the eye, quiet, subtle, deceptive failure. We've uncovered the habits that cause it, the chain reaction that sustains it, and the identity that can rise above it. And now we arrive at the most important moment of all, the moment where you decide what to do with this knowledge. Jim Rohn used to say, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. And that's the opportunity you have right here, right now. Not someday, not eventually. Not when the timing is perfect. Now, because now is the only moment that has any power. Now is the moment where a new life begins. Now is the place where excuses end and responsibility starts. Now is the beginning of a new identity, a new path, a new future. Let me remind you of something simple but profound. Your life does not get better by chance. It gets better by change. And change is never a matter of the calendar, it's a matter of decision. Most people will listen to teachings like these and feel inspired for an hour, maybe a day. Then they return to their routines, their habits, their comfort zones. They go back to tomorrow. They cling to blame. They drift without a plan. And a year passes, then 5, then 10, and one day they look back with regret instead of gratitude. But that does not have to be your story. You are not destined to repeat the mistakes of yesterday. You are not trapped by the habits of your past. You are not condemned to drift through life without direction. My friends, the future is still open. Your potential is still waiting. Your success is still possible. And the door to a new life is standing wide open if you will walk through it. Here is the wake-up call. Stop delaying. Stop blaming. Stop drifting. And start becoming. Take one step today. One decision. One commitment. Because one decision is enough to start the momentum that changes everything. Jim Rohn used to say, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. So begin your disciplines. Start your list. Choose your habits. Raise your standards. And someday, not by chance, but by choice, you'll look back on this moment with gratitude. You'll say, that was it. That was the day I woke up. That was the day I took control. That was the day everything changed. My friends, your wake-up call begins now. Your new identity begins now. Your future begins now. And the best part of your life is waiting just beyond this decision.